So hello and welcome to our 2026-2027 live budget session, which we're calling Breaking Down the Budget. My name's Chris White. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the City of Prospect. Thank you for joining us today for this session. Joining me, though, is our Mayor, Matt Larwood. Matt, welcome and good afternoon.
Thanks, Chris.
So a few questions I think that we have to walk each other through, I guess. You as the Mayor from the sort of community perspective and myself from an administration perspective to help the community understand our 2026-2027 budget position a little better. Important to note that this is your say, your opportunity to have your say into our budget for 2026-2027, which is on City Prospect website for consultation until this coming Sunday, the 31st of May. So please take your opportunity to have your say into the budget. Maybe something will come up through our question and answer this afternoon that might pique your interest, or you might have some other questions or concerns or maybe some ideas for us to consider in our budget process. For that, please jump onto our website, which is at prospect.sa.gov.au. And thankfully, you will see a big splash on our website showing you how to get to the consultation page for our budget. So that's for you to get involved. We have some questions, though, to walk each other through, and that will help you, again, better understand what the draft budget looks like. Council have not yet made a final decision in the budget, so your consultation, questions and input does matter and does provide an opportunity to shape Council's budget. So to that end, Matt, my first question for you, as Mayor and CEO, this is our fourth budget together for Council, and this represents, over those 4 years, at 3.5%, our lowest rate increase in 4 years. Now, in fact, it's our lowest in 5 years, going back before even this Council, which is, I think, quite impressive given the inflationary environment we've been through. Can you explain, given that Council sets these rate increases, explain Council's reasons for trying to keep those rate increases low, and in particular this year when inflationary pressures are pretty high?
Thanks, Chris. So we're dealing with the public's money, and we scrutinise every single cent that we're going to spend, and we scrutinise all the things we could do. And in businesses and in Council, there's many, many things that we'd love to do, but there's also many things that we have to do. So first of all, we focus on the have-to-dos, which are all the things that people expect from us as a responsible council, and that's the typical things that we all know council does: maintain the roads, the footpaths, the trees, pick up your bins. But there's a myriad of other services that council provides to a range of different community groups and individuals, which are also super important. And so when we look at what the rate requirements are and therefore what the rate increase is, we put a whole lot of things together to come up with the right answer. With regards to the rate increase, you're spot on with regards to 3.5% is what we're going out to, and that's really pleasing to myself and the other elected members. We see other councils around Adelaide struggling with budgets, which mean they have to put out higher rate increases, but we are very, very conscious of the cost of living that we're all experiencing, and to that end, we want to keep rate rises, average rate rises, as low as possible. It's important to note that we don't increase the rates and end up with a bucket of money that we didn't have last year, because the cost of doing business goes up through the CPI increase each year, and so we have to put it up around there each year. Excuse me, or else we're not able to provide either the level of service or the amount of services or the quality of service that our community expects. So around the CPI increase is about the right mark, and then it comes down to how responsibly are we spending that money.
Thanks, Matt. And you, just to pick up on something you said there around that cost of doing business, I mean, it really is for us a question of just trying to keep pace. And thankfully, not always does all those inflationary pressures that impact our ratepayers have the same impact on our cost of service. So from time to time, our rates might be at or slightly above inflation, but primarily we want to keep them at or below the inflationary level. So I think that's a good point to make. Now, I did mention this is our lowest rate rise in 5 years, and I think that's something to be applauded and hopefully something our residents recognise and appreciate. But how does it really compare to previous years? Do you, obviously going back into past years, you'll recall we've had much higher rate increases?
Look, it certainly makes it more difficult for us to make the right decisions as to what we spend our money on. If we cap the rate increase, that gives us an amount of money to spend. Then we have to disperse that amongst all the things that we want to do and have to do. It makes us think really hard about what adds value to the community, and that's one of the things that the internal team guides the elected members through. We have a range of metrics and ways of assessing what adds value to the community, and they're different things have different measurements. So that's really the basis behind how we make our decisions, what's going to add value to the community. Now, it's important to also recognise that we're balancing out things that will add value in this year, things that will add value in 2 years' time, and things that are building the foundations to add value in 5 or 10 years' time. So we can't only think of what we're doing this year. We have to think about what we're doing in 5 or 10 years' time. It's very much like a typical household. You don't just budget for the next week. You think about that holiday that you might like to go on, or that trip to Victor Harbour, or that need to buy a new car in 2 years' time. And you take all those things into account. So it's not only about what we're going to do this year. It's about setting the scene for how we're going to continue to add value in the future.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. It's also, I think, worth pointing out that over the last 5 years, in every one of those 5 years but one, we've been at or below the level of CPI with our rate increase, which is, I think, something council should be proud of over the past 5 years, and that collectively, assuming this year's rate increase proceeds at 3.5%, over the past 4 years, ratepayers will have seen a real reduction in their rates of 1.6%.
So here's a question for you, Chris, because you know the answer to this, I'm pretty sure, but we'll test the waters on that. So it's one thing to come in with a CPI, a rate increase of around CPI, but what's our community telling us each year when we test the waters on how well we've done through surveys and that sort of thing? Are they telling us that you've done the right thing with the money? Have they said you've spent it wisely? So, yeah, it's great to contain the increase, but have we experienced the value that we expect from living in the city of Prospect?
It's a great question. I think honestly, that's where processes like this consultation really give the community an opportunity to give us that direct feedback. It's been a couple of years since we've done a direct resident satisfaction survey, and certainly the last resident satisfaction survey gave us pretty good results, given that the primary concerns were around just improving our transfer of information, not the quality of service we provide. And I think a better measure of that even is our recent asset management planning condition assessment exercise, which we spoke about actually before this meeting. The Mayor and I were discussing how council monitors and manages the quality and condition of its assets. And one of the processes we've run very recently, which is actually coming to council tonight, Mr. Mayor, is our new asset management plans for our roads, curbs and footpaths, which include a full assessment of all the current condition of our assets, which shows that based upon our Metro Council counterparts, we've got some of the best quality and condition assets in the city of Adelaide, which I think is something I'm very proud of, certainly as a CEO. And in the context of the fact that we haven't been forced to increase rates at 5 or 10% a year for a long period of time, and that the average residential rate in real terms is coming down, to see the quality of our assets improving, I think is a real testament to the good management of council.
So based on that answer, you're suggesting that a better way to extend the life of assets is to maintain them properly as we're going along, because we all know the situation at home where the car looks like it could get along for another 12 months without a service, or that broken part of the house, you know, I don't need to worry about that crack in the wall at this point in time. 2 years' time, that comes back to bite you, and all of a sudden the cost of fixing that is 5 or 6-fold. So is our principle really to maintain, so two questions, maintain at a high level such that we are trying to head off those crisis spends that you might see in that scenario? And B, can you tell us a little bit about the fact that there's a ratio, one of our key ratios relates to the amount of money we spend maintaining our assets, and that's a local government association set ratio. How are we looking this year, or have we gone over the last 12 months or 2 years in hitting that ratio?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there's a long-term question here, and there's let's say, the last 3 years. And I think it's important to bear in mind that when you have 110 kilometres worth of roads and nearly 200 kilometres worth of curbs and footpaths across the city to manage, that's a huge volume of assets. We've got, dozens of large and small parks ranging from tiny little pocket parks and squares on the side of a road up to facilities like Charles Kane, Prospect Oval and Broadview. And so across our asset portfolios, our general intent, based upon the guidance of council, is to essentially maintain to a Toyota Camry level of service, and also to keep that Camry serviced at the regular intervals, not to, put mag wheels and tint on it, but also not to run it into the ground so that we're replacing transmissions and engines because we're not looking after it. So it is to do what you would consider the right thing to keep your assets at a solid, dependable, quality service level, but not over-servicing them so that we get the lowest whole of life cost for that asset. We patch the road up until it's clear that it's not economical to keep fixing it. And then when it's not economical to keep fixing it, we fix it properly. So that's how we do these things with all of our assets, to try and minimise the cost and maximise the overall quality of an asset over its life. Because remember, a road could last 40 or 50 years if properly built. So I think, but of course, you've got to make sure you patch those potholes quickly. Any cracks that appear, you've got to fill them. And if you do have a surface start to break up, you've got to get onto that so that you don't have to rip the whole road up to replace it. So, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you have any follow-on questions for that, but if you don't, I might move on.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of pretty significant capital projects on our draft budget this year. And the three big ones, obviously, are the Prospect Lifestyle Precinct, the Broadview Tennis Club, and responsiveness to our integrated transport plan, which is a whole bunch of transport-related improvements around the city. But other than those three things, how do we ensure that renewals and core services remain a priority? We spoke about obviously making sure that we update our assets appropriately, but how do council make sure that those things are funded and always get the priority they deserve without being diverted for the shiny, sparkly baubles?
Good question, and that relates back to building for the future whilst addressing the current day issues. Look, I think we work to a plan there because we don't do things by accident. So we've got a plan, and we've got deep knowledge with regards to how often we need to replace things, how often we need to renew things. We send inspectors out every 3 years to go and check out the condition of roads, footpaths, curbs, gutters, and those types of things like that. So in the first instance, we keep an eye on those things. We budget sensibly for them. And third of all, we always look for, and this is probably more your area than mine, but I know that the team always look for more efficient ways of doing things. So there's newer technologies to help us get things done quickly. We do potentially from time to time, we might go into a buying agreement with another neighbouring council to do a whole range of things at the same time, which gives us some economy of scale because we're a small council. So we're always looking for opportunities to reduce the cost of delivery whilst maintaining the quality of what we're doing. So it is a balancing act, and that's where we need to look at the range of things that we do and just work out what the right range of things to do year on year. Now, I've been through 12 budgets now, and it's never the same. You can't walk in saying, right, we've got this nailed. Every single budget process has been different, and every year there's a slightly different priority and a slightly different emphasis on different parts of what we do. But on balance, if we're keeping an eye on things and we're acting responsibly, then we do build for the future whilst addressing the current day needs.
Just to pick up on that and maybe expand a little further, I mean, there's obviously a couple other things that we do as well, and it's hard sometimes to remember all of these things, but you and I are constantly in federal and state ministerial offices advocating for funding support for various things. And obviously, some innovative funding approaches that council are considering with projects like PLP to try and take pressure off our budget as well.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. And we, as you said, we regularly spend time with local and federal members pushing the case, and we've been very successful over the years. You know, if we head down the hill and down towards the Churchill Road, Regency Road corner, you'll see what is going to amount to, I think overall it's around $10 to $12 million at this point in time. And only a third of that has come out of our ratepayers' pockets. 2/3 of that has come from federal or state. And the staff tell me that that was a massive win, and you don't often get that level of commitment. There's more work to do down there, we know, but we do have a strong track record. We maintain good relationships with our state and federal counterparts. We like to be seen as being easy to do business with, and so we build those relationships and maintain them. And then when the time comes, we can walk in that door and we can push harder for funding opportunities, which will help augment what we can afford and give us more money to do more things.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next question's around some of our more environmentally focused projects, and specifically this year, it's our food organics, green organics waste initiative, and also our LED street lighting initiatives, which are two environmentally focused initiatives. But I think it's fair to say that it's easy to lose sight of some of the economic and financial benefits of these projects. Maybe you could explain how those two projects in particular offer more than just environmental benefits to the community.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, there's a lot to those two aspects that you've raised, and it's worth noting that when we last did go out to the community for a survey and ask what was important, the environment ranked significantly highly. So it might be easier to ignore the environment, but we don't want to do that. In fact, we had a meeting the other week where we set about emerging our environmental strategy to include a whole range of things. So that's coming down the track, and I'm really looking forward to that. But the two projects you mentioned, the great thing about those two projects is that they have an environmental dividend, but they also have a financial dividend. So the simple way of explaining FOGO is that green waste is the heaviest and most expensive waste to dispose of. If we can get more of that green waste in the green bins and out of the red bins, actually reduces costs to ratepayers. And so the first trial period saw an increase of around from 51% to around 72% diversion, which is significant. And we're the envy of councils around the state. I often at meetings where there's a bunch of mayors there, I often get mayors coming up saying, how'd you do it? And it wasn't easy, and the guys came up with an innovative way of ensuring that we had good buy-in. And the same thing with the replacement of the lighting fixtures. That's got a financial dividend because we pay the electricity. Even though it's not our infrastructure, we pay the electricity. So that's an environmental benefit, and it's also a cost benefit to the residents of the City of Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think also with food organics, green organics, the FOGO initiative, worth pointing out again that hits ratepayers direct. Green waste can be recycled into mulch, which actually is a money maker potentially for councils at the back end. We get paid for that waste if it's clean. Yep. Whereas if you stick it in your red bin and it's got to go to landfill, we pay a significant amount per tonne to dispose of that. And to your point, that heavy waste going in the red bin, if you can get that where it belongs into the green bin, it's good for ratepayers and it's good for the environment as well. So, we've got some new staff beginning with council this year, and there are a couple of staff lines in the budget. One's a customer service position, another is a strategic projects delivery role, and a third is to help us manage our traffic and parking challenges in the city. From an elected member standpoint, can you explain why you support those initiatives for the community?
Thanks, Chris. When I was door knocking 4 years ago, people were more inclined to say to me, make sure the quality of service was high, as opposed to can you cut my rates? And that's genuine. I'm not just saying that. That rarely came up. People would say, well, we'd like lower rates, but we're prepared to pay what we are paying if the quality of what we're getting is as high as what it is. And so I'm comfortable supporting that position. The second one, the project support role, is incredibly important. In my day job, I deal with a lot of project work. I'm not a project manager, but I can see the benefit of having someone closely watching and guiding the team delivering, because a little bit of guidance here, nudging there, some expertise there can save percentages of costs overall, bring things in on budget, shorten the time frame to delivery. So that role is important. And the third role is directly in response to the ongoing and somewhat wicked problem that we have with parking in the City of Prospect. We're a victim of our own success with regards to where we're at. But I think we're also generally a fairly law-abiding community, and what I don't like seeing, and what members of the public don't like seeing, is people parking over driveways, people parking on yellow lines causing issues, people parking in bike lanes and those types of things like that. So that role plays an important role in helping, I think, deliver a safer environment and a safer community for us to live in. So there's always an argument about how many staff you should have, and I definitely support those three roles because they are critical to successful delivery of different aspects of what we do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's also worth pointing out, with the growth that we've had in the city of Prospect, in particular in the last 10 to 15 years, and a lot of it focused down on that Churchill Road, Prospect Road corridor, having those roles to respond to, the project delivery requirements of council in those areas in particular, but also the traffic and parking challenges, I think hopefully will assist in supporting that growth or the response to it. Mr. Mayor, our long-term financial plan, it's an important strategic document for council. It defines, I think, to the outside world whether or not we are sustainable into the future, not just now, but into the next generation, and certainly well beyond this term of council. You sit in our audit committee, and so you get, a special insight into the long-term trajectory of council's finances. Are you confident our long-term financial plan is sustainable, and can you explain why?
I think our track record gives me confidence that the team that is here today is capable of delivering similar great results in the future. And by that I mean we've had surpluses for the last 4 years. We have a certain ratio of surplus that we aim for. We don't try to make too much profit. We're supposed to spend most of the money we bring in. But the Audit and Risk Committee picks apart everything we do. They're experts in different aspects of audit and risk from an accounting background, finance background and risk backgrounds. So combine their knowledge and skills with the team that we have today helps us be confident that the pathway forward is the right one. Now, if you look at the long-term financial plan, the way that I interpret it in my mind is that the next 2 to 3 years should be fairly predictable, except if there's things that happen out of our control, which we saw a number of years ago with COVID and those sorts of things like that. After 3 years, it's skills and expertise to pitch around where it should be. When you get out beyond that, it's far less predictable and it's not wobbly, but there's a lot of uncertainty because the world changes pretty rapidly these days. And so we're always looking at new ways of ensuring that we are keeping track of where things are going. There's a lot of scrutiny amongst the elected members when we look at our quarterly budgets and our reports, and we see what has been done, what hasn't been done, where things have blown out, where we've been able to save money. But I think, in this case, track record over the last 4 years gives me the confidence that the team in place and the way we do things is in line with a successful long-term financial plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, obviously, our key performance indicators as an organisation, we're tracking pretty well against those. Yeah, we are. We have 4 key performance indicators, and I won't bore everyone with the details, but we have a in the sweet spot, so there's an above and below a certain percentage or ratio or dollar amount, and we're able to monitor whether we're heading above or below or on track, and the team has different strategies to deal with what happens if we're going above, what happens if we're going below. And we look at this quarterly, and so nothing steers off track for too long. Every quarter we look at those key financial indicators and we're able to put in place strategies which we generally see bring them back into line. It's not always within the next quarter because sometimes it's like the Titanic, it takes a fair while to turn around. However, in my time on council, I've seen us pretty reliably steer things back on track fairly soon after. So that's another indicator that we're running a responsible council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, here's a tough one and really focused, I think, on the political decision-making in the chamber from the community's representatives, yourself and our elected members. And it is this: how does council decide which projects get funded and which ones miss out?
As I mentioned before, I've been on council 12 years, and I think we've done it slightly differently every year. Back in the day, we had a whole lot of discretionary projects which used to get funded, and it was kind of like a bidding war. These days, we have far less of those sorts of projects because we've really trimmed things back. But it is based around value to the community. So we have a list of projects. Sorry, I'm just about to cough. A list of projects that we'd like to do. The team put a dollar value and then a community value to those projects. And then the elected members have time to go out to their individual communities. We have several budget sessions which break down different parts of the budget into operating and capital, for example. And we then, I guess, we scenario plan what it might look like if we do these things and don't do these things, or if we trim those ones back or cut that one out completely. What I can tell you is that every single year there are elected members who are disappointed because projects which they are passionate about and which they can see a lot of community value just don't get funded because we can't do everything. If we did everything, we'd be looking at rate rises of 8, 10, 12%, and we know that the community can't afford that, and we don't expect them to pay that. So it is a juggling act, and part of that process is the consultation process, which we're currently underway at the moment. And so we genuinely take on board feedback from the community. We'd like to get more feedback, but we do take on board feedback. We feed that back into the process, and then we make a final decision. And once we make that decision, then we might grind our teeth if our project that we were passionate about doesn't get funded, but we get around everything that we're going to do and we move on.
Good answer. So our next question, Mr. Mayor, talks about some of our bigger projects that we are planning to fund this year through the draft budget. I'll walk you through them and ask you to sort of explain your position and I think your understanding of council's position on each one. So outside of our big renewal projects, which again is that sort of bread and butter, keep the roads, footpaths, curbs, parks and everything sort of functioning, and outside of the Prospect Lifestyle Precinct, which is obviously a very large project council are conducting, and I'm sure most of the community are familiar with what's happening there. Our biggest capital projects this year are our proposed renewal of the tennis courts at Broadview Tennis Club, our public toilet renewals, which will start with Charles Kane and continue with Memorial Gardens, and Irish Harp upgrades, which include stormwater, roadway upgrades and lighting improvements there. Can you speak through your thoughts on each of those projects, Mr. Mayor?
Thanks, Chris. The Broadview Tennis Club, part of the Broadview Sporting Precinct, is the last part of that whole project that we haven't addressed yet, and that's a project which has been going on for my entire lifetime on council, 12 years. One of the first things I saw when I started 12 years ago was quite a fanciful design with a $20 million price tag to it, and that was obviously ripped up and thrown in the bin. But since then, we've bitten off parts at a time over many years. Now, the Broadview Tennis Club is the last major piece of the puzzle that we need to address there, and it has the potential to become a Tier 1 light facility, which means that second behind Memorial Drive, it's right up there, and it's the place where international tennis players come and train when the major tournament is on in Adelaide in January, but it's also the place where 500 or 600 members of our community come and train and play and socialise and be part of a community as well. So from my perspective, it's very well used. It's a very well run club. They've won many awards over the years, Australia level awards as well. So I'm right behind that project. We would like to do a slightly broader project to upgrade the club rooms at the same time, but we'll put that on ice for the time being, and we're focusing on the core delivery of the tennis courts, which will bring that up to scratch from that perspective, and then we'll go into bat with our federal and state counterparts for funding to complete the rest of that project over the next couple of years. Now, the second one is around toilets, and it's funny, I was telling a couple of friends that we were having a workshop last week on a toilet strategy, and they said, you really need a workshop on a toilet strategy? And I thought, do we really need a workshop on a toilet strategy? And after the workshop, I said, yeah, we did, because it's not just a simple decision. We owe it to the community to deliver a high-quality service, and we have quite a few parks for a small council, and we understand the nature of each of those parks, and some of them have been well serviced already, but most of them are very underserviced from that perspective. The toilets were built many, many years ago. There's issues with crime, and they're not necessarily positioned in the best spot, or they're not existent. And so the Cane Reserve one is first cab off the rank, and I support that, because that area down there is right in the middle of our strongest sector of our community from a resident's perspective. And over the last couple of years, it's become a more and more valued community hub. So you go down there on any night of the week and you see sporting organisations, you see families walking around, you see the playgrounds, you see the fitness equipment. So we have to do something there. That's a good starting point. High growth area as well, yeah. Memorial Gardens is one of the key centerpieces to our community, and anyone who's been there at any point in time would agree that the toilets are well past their use by date. So that's a no-brainer to me. The other one we talked about was the Irish Harp upgrades. So it's a beautiful opportunity, is the word I'm going to use, to turn that park into something a lot better than what it is. It starts with infrastructure, such as what you've mentioned, and in time it might turn it into a master plan to see if the community would like us to do something different. But we need to bring that park up to a minimum standard that we're happy with, and that's received funding, which is fantastic. And I've no doubt over the next 2 or 3 years that will have a bit of a spotlight shone on it to see what the community would like us to do there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just check with Tilly. How are we doing for time? Okay. So those are our big capital projects this year. We have a couple of operating projects too, which maybe we shouldn't spend a great deal of time on, just given how much more we still need to cover. But we obviously have to fund an election this year, Mr. Mayor, which I'm sure will be of interest to yourself and potentially to our residents, I'm sure. The LED street lighting upgrade and also our year 2 implementation of our integrated transport plan. Those are our 3 biggest operating projects. Maybe you walk us through your thoughts on those.
So the election comes once every 4 years, and it's not a simple thing to do, and it's our job to administer the election. And so there's a lot of effort required and costs involved with doing that. We can't skimp on that because that's a critical process and one that is highly scrutinised. And so the costs are the costs there. We never overdo anything here, but we also wouldn't afford and take a risk of underdoing anything on that project. So that's one. The LED lights, we already talked about those. I believe from memory that might have been deferred for a year previously, or it might have been cut back. Split it in half, yeah. We wanted to do that whole lot a couple of years ago, but we felt that we needed to put some funding in other areas, and so it's good to finish that project off. No one likes to see things half done, and so it'll be good to nail that one. The third one, the integrated transport plan, has been something that is close to every elected member's heart. We've got a plan together, which is an integrated plan, and that will be rolled out over several years, and I'd expect budget lines over the next 4 to 5 years for the various high-value initiatives as part of that plan.
Mr. Mayor, I can confirm no proposed cuts this year, and also a couple of other increases in service levels beyond those we spoke about in terms of traffic and parking and project management. We're also increasing our public art budget and increasing our budget toward works down at Ovingham to continue work on the crossings down there, and also the community garden, get that kicked off. So some great stuff happening. Now, economic situation, the world economic situation. You spoke about COVID before being an impact on council, something we had to be agile to and respond to. Obviously, we've had a bit of economic global impact recently, threatening our operations and our budget. Is council ready for that in your mind, given your understanding of our long-term sustainable financial position?
I think council's as ready as it can be. We can only predict a certain distance into the future, but what we do anticipate is that there are unknowns, and so I think that reinforces the importance of delivering balanced budgets and lower CPI increases when we're in a bit more of a settled time. We've done it even in the light of significant cost of living increases through petrol prices and those sorts of things like that. So we kind of have to ride the wave to an extent. One of the other impacts that we need to deal with at a local government level is from time to time the state government gives us more to do but doesn't necessarily fund it. And so a significant proportion of every dollar that ratepayers in the City of Prospect pay is to cover the cost of delivering services that the state government used to deliver. So unfortunately, we're at the whim of state and federal. We're good friends with our local member, but if they decide to do something that's unpredictable, then that's what that's what they decide to do. So we have to be ready for the unknowns that we know about, and we also have to anticipate the unknowns that we don't know about as well. So I think hitting the KPIs that we've got, keeping rate rises low, puts us in a good position such that if we have to react and respond quickly, then I think our community probably understands that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, we have a couple of questions from our community, and some of these may be answers we have to give together. But we'll do our best here. So these are your questions. And look, please, if you've got more questions, these were just the questions we got ahead of today's session. If you have more, please know you've got until Sunday to get these questions and your feedback generally and specifically in for our draft budget. Again, it closes on Sunday. Go to the City of Prospect website, prospect.sa.gov.au, ask your questions, and we'll do our best to respond and engage. Or, of course, you can contact your ward councillor or the mayor. I'm sure they'll be happy to support any questions you have to ask. The first question is around tree replacements. A question from one of our residents is that they feel our tree replacements take too long and that we need to do more curb and gutter maintenance. Do you want to have a go at that, or would you like me to have a go at it, Mr. Mayor?
I'll have a go and you can score me out of 10, okay. CEO. So we've got to break that question into tree replacements. Now, a tree replacement is not necessarily as simple as what it might look like. Sometimes it is, but at other times there's all sorts of services that we have to consider when we're pulling a tree out. It takes careful planning, it takes coordinating with those service providers, and so seasonal as well. Yeah, that's right. So what I would say is for the community to continue to bring us up to speed with those situations that they see as an issue, and the more input and feedback we get, the more we can continue to focus on how to preempt where we might need to jump in from a tree replacement point of view. We are planting a significant number of new trees alongside replacing trees that haven't lasted the distance or are beyond their useful life as well. So there is a lot of time and effort spent on that. And if from time to time we don't meet the community's expectations, then the best way to address that is to bring it to our attention. Now, curb and guttering is the same thing, and I feel like I spend about 15 minutes to half an hour every week reporting things that I see. And again, I would say to the community, if you've got a concern with things that you see and you don't see them getting fixed, we do go around and we check every street, every curb, every gutter around every 3 years, but we're not constantly driving around the streets because that wouldn't be a great use of resources. So the way I deal with it is to jump onto the My Local app. It's a free app you can download, and it's very simple. You click on the button, you take a picture, it knows where you are, you choose from a drop-down menu as to what the issue is, you put some commentary there, you press send, that goes into our system, you get an acknowledgement that it's been received and that it's been addressed. So that's the way that I would advise people. Essentially what I'm saying is help us be our eyes and ears, and with your input, then we can address those issues just a little bit quicker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's also worth pointing out that in the past 12 months, Council have approved a reasonably substantial budget adjustment to try and do some urgent repairs on a number of footpaths around the city. I think there were 17 separate streets addressed through a budget initiative that Council moved in the past 12 months. So also worth pointing that out. The Council does understand that from time to time, especially, I mean, trees and curbs and footpaths, I think, are an interesting pairing because tree roots in our leafy green streets are one of the biggest problems for our footpaths and the quality and smoothness of our footpaths. And those things develop over time, but they also generally often reach an inflection point where in a number of streets at the same time, all these issues can manifest. And we do need your help to know where those problems are. And please take the Mayor's advice and report those if you feel you need to. The second question, Mr. Mayor, was around East Side activation. So there was a project included in our draft budget papers that was not ultimately supported by Council around an East Side activation officer that was unfunded. It was a staff member intended to support some improved activation at Broadview Football Club. Can you explain your understanding of that project and potentially why you feel Council weren't able to fund that this year?
Look, I think it was a timing issue. And the reason I say that is because we do have our eyes on the Broadview Tennis Club and building a facility there over the next couple of years. And at that point in time, it might make sense to have someone spending a lot more time over there managing that side of things. But also, the first thing that we always do in council, instead of putting on another resource, is look for ways to become as efficient and deliver as high quality service with current resourcing available as it is. So there's a bit of work to do with the folks at the Broadview Community Club to help them streamline their processes and help us get some better community outcomes. And once we've squeezed as much value out of that, once we've got the process working smoothly, a really clear understanding and delivering value to the community expectations, if there's still a need, compounded by the potential Broadview Tennis Club, then I think it's something we'd consider in the future. But the timing wasn't right, and I don't think there was the need to spend an entire staff's wage on that particular role.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, Mr. Mayor, those are all the questions we had for you. You had something else to add?
I've got one for you.
Okay.
Now, we haven't practiced this before.
Okay.
So I'm not throwing you under the bus at all because you know the answer to this one. So one of the things that we often hear is that there's a council tax. So when we go out to tender for a project or we're procuring, we hear people say, oh, gee, look at how much council's been charging. If that was private sector, you wouldn't get charged that. They just know it's council and they just jack the prices up. Now, we did some investigation and research on that through a quantity surveyor recently. Can you, in 30 seconds or a minute, provide the community with your understanding of why that statement isn't true?
Sure. So again, based upon independent external quantity surveying advice, these are people who serve both the private sector, the not-for-profit sector, and also the public sector as well. We have clear advice to the fact that when council tests the market and you have multiple people putting in bids, those people still feel that they are bidding against each other. And as a result, there's a strong sense from the quantity surveying market, these are the experts in pricing projects, that councils don't pay any extra, certainly in relation to a like-for-like project delivery, than the private sector. The challenges which can often arise in the public sector are where you go to the market with poor specifications or an undefined project scope, which I think is something that if you go back 5 or 10 years, this and many other councils were sometimes guilty of, is that you would come in with a community wish list and then you would put that to the market rather than getting something to a detailed level of design where everybody knows exactly what needs to be built and the market can say, yes, we can put a pretty firm and clear price on what that's going to cost to build. The risks aren't really that high because we have a pretty clear sense as to what it'll cost. If we can do that as well as the private sector, and I feel right now with the strength of our project team we can, then we get the same sort of pricing as the private sector gets. Now, that's not to say that the pricing's always where we want it to be, nor is it to say that always our quantity surveyors get their estimates perfect every time, because there are still unforeseen issues that can pop up when you're dealing with a public realm. We are dealing with footpaths that are full of, Telstra fibre optic lines and gas mains and sap and line, all sorts of things. And sometimes you dig up a footpath and find a stormwater main that was built there in the 1910s and you didn't know it was there. These things happen far more in the public realm than they do on private land. But we do the best we can with what we have. Knowing our assets as well as we can is a big part of that. Obviously having great project managers, good designs that are very fully fledged before we go to the market, and then testing the market competitively. And I can say this, as the head of an Eastern Region Council procurement group, I am in close contact with pretty much all of the senior procurement officers in the metro councils, and there's 16 of us who deal with these things. And I can tell you we get pretty good pricing based upon not just councils, but also in particular the state government and the private sector. Look, the scale and nature of projects they're doing and the fact that a lot of the time their projects don't need to survive, 2,000 5-year-olds every weekend. The standards of construction sometimes in the private sector don't need to be as safe or as long lasting as we expect from our assets, which I think can also sometimes skew the numbers a little bit. But in general, I'm very confident that we get value. But of course, that doesn't mean that assets are cheap. If you want to build good quality assets that will stand the test of time, sometimes it's better value to buy a Camry than to buy a Lada, even though the Lada's cheaper.
one question for you, one more question for you. How are you feeling about the budget?
Mr. Mayor, budget time is always difficult for staff, but I think I can say that I am very happy that council have taken a responsible approach to spending, because from an administrator's perspective, we can provide advice to council in terms of what's affordable, but ultimately it's council and I guess the pressures you get from the community to build more or to do things that the community wants, that can sometimes drive budget pressures and force higher rate increases. And you've seen that in other councils. I won't name names, but if you read the advertiser in a couple of weeks' time, you'll be able to see them. Thankfully, we're going to be at the bottom of that list, but it's not because of me. It's because of responsible decision making from elected members. And I'm not saying that to butter you up, but we do have a culture here within the elected body of just being responsible and careful with ratepayers' money and making sure that we don't build vanity projects or overspend, that we do the things that the community really need, or that would support the increased growth or those real pressures, rather than just building shiny, sparkly things that that maybe are nice to haves but not must haves.
I think you're underselling yourself and your team's contribution, CEO. I think that it's a team effort, as we always say around here. And whilst we're the ones that make the decisions, your team are the ones that equip us with the information to the right level of detail to make the decisions. So we're very thankful that we have a high caliber team to work with, and together we deliver those outcomes. Are we wrapping up? Because I just wanted to say that if anyone's watching is interested in not only participating in the consultation, but potentially setting the scene for this sort of thing, and maybe even sitting in this chair in the future, then the council elections are coming up later on this year. And it's your opportunity, if you are keen and willing, and if you think you've got something to offer, to consider nominating. There's 8 elected member positions up for grabs and a mayor's position up for grabs. And if you've always sat there thinking, I could do better than that, well, why not give it a crack? Why not put your hand up and bring your skills to the table? We'd love to see a lot of interest in the upcoming elections.
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for your time. And just from a mutual appreciation society perspective, I receive that on behalf of my staff with thanks. It is a team effort, but also I think our community, the ultimate reason why we're doing this. And so again, just to reiterate what the Mayor said, please get your feedback in. This is your chance to have your say. We do listen. We do care. The shame is sometimes that we just don't get enough feedback to define a change in direction. So please involve yourself in the process. And by all means, if you're interested in your community, then local government elections may be an opportunity for you to increase that level of involvement. Check our website for more details. Mr. Mayor, thank you for your time. Just a reminder, if you are watching this and you are hopping mad at home and want to have your say, you can actually come down right now. From now until 6:30 p.m. this evening, we'll be here ready to hear from you in a public meeting on our budget. So if you can't make it, then again, you've got until Sunday. Jump on our website, have your say. Chris White, CEO, City of Prospect, on behalf of Mayor Larwood and our elected members, thank you for watching.